Welcome to Humanities Montana's virtual Montana Conversations program. Today we are featuring a conversation with Montana's Poets Laureate, Melissa Kwasny and Mandy Smoker. Melissa Kwasny is the author of 6 books of poetry, a collection of essays, and the nonfiction book Putting on the Dog, The Animal Origins of What We Wear. Melissa has taught poetry writing in graduate and undergraduate programs and in the public schools for over 30 years. Mandy Smoker is Fort Peck Assiniboine and Sioux. She is the author of the collection of poems, Another Attempt at Rescue. She's a lifelong educator and advocate for Indian education and currently works for the nonprofit Education Northwest as a practice expert in Indian education. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you, Sam, for this idea, and also thank you for Humanities Montana. Mandy and I are honored to be sharing the role of Poet Laureate for the next 2 years, serving as ambassadors for poetry across the state. This is the first time that the laureateship position has been shared, a choice that Mandy and I made and that we're very excited about. As women, we believe in the creativity that's inherent in collaboration, and we hope to use this position in the next few years to demonstrate that, the creativity of working together and of women working together. As women from marginalized communities, one of our aims is to celebrate poetry as an art, an act that fosters connection, relationships, and bridge building. Through our visits to schools, libraries, and communities, we hope during the next 2 years to demonstrate how poetry can speak to issues of diversity and inclusion, landscape and environment, and culture and history. Most importantly, as writers and longtime educators, we understand that poetry can provide a source of understanding and hope, something young and old need desperately in these times of climate crisis, the current pandemic, and assaults on people's dignities and freedoms. How does poetry provide hope? For me, poetry is the language of the interior life. It's the language of feelings and dreams and intuitions, the heart, the spirit, all those things that we have that make us who we are, but that other people don't necessarily see. Poetry reminds us that we have an interior life, that what we feel matters, that what everyone feels matters, and that we are worth something because of that life inside us. Hope is the thing with feathers, Dickinson wrote, and we already feel that fluttering. It reminds us of what's inside. I'd like to start by reading a poem called Still Green that is from my collection called The 9 Senses. Still green. Buy the deep blue cloth and wrap it around the alder. The yellow warblers will fall floor by floor through the leaves. Sit on the leather couch until it is soft enough for guests. Here, high in the mountains where the world began. The yard is torn up, the graves disturbed, penstemon and ruffled columbine gone. Go out with your broom, the limbs heavy with early snow. Touch the shoulders of your subjects and let them rise. You're getting sweet on each other, so perhaps that is where the hours go, into the making of pink and orange jams. You could spread your work out across a wood table for days. You could give each other this spread. The rest comes easy, cranberries and winter squash, the raking of stones from the field. Imagine your hair, a prayer bundle of straw. Ask where you are going and with whom. Time has stopped rolling and is teetering, silver gold on edge. A day of shearing rain, pouring sun. Many have left, but today, as far as you know, no one is leaving. Call them. Let them hear your voice, soft from its cave, so soft the answering machine cuts it off.
It has meant a great deal in both Melissa and I's lives. It's like a force, but also a companion, a guide, a wind at your back. It's helped me personally to seek new understandings and continually pay attention to the details of life. something I always try to express and generate when I'm working with students. Stop and notice the quality of light coming in the window that day at that moment. Try to capture it. It's helped me certainly through some of the most difficult times in my life, and I also encourage young people and others to use use writing as a powerful force in your life, a safe place where you can go to seek new understandings. For me, it was a place I could go and express that loss of my mother when I was in my 20s, and so it's always been something very, very important to me. It's been also really been a way to retell and reclaim the story of my home, of my family, and of my language and culture as an Assiniboine woman. So much about American Indians has been told from an other perspective. And so my piece of this literary fabric is just one small piece of a new narrative, one that is founded really in resilience and the truth of who we are and where we come from as tribal peoples. And I really look forward to the day when there are more Native, but also especially Assiniboine poets, artists, playwrights, musicians who continue to share our stories in contemporary times. This is a poem from my collection. It's entitled From a Tin Box. From a tin box in my uncle's old army chest, the teeth of an elk rattle. A full-grown elk who gave up his life one November. The chest is standard issue, safe at the side of my uncle's bed. Every morning his toes touch down 4 inches from the metal, from the strong ivory-tinted teeth that listen for this awakening. He smiles at this. He calls the teeth a shelter, a low ridge sprouting new grasses. My uncle opens the chest and gathers them into the shadow of his thick cupped palms. He confides in them a dream from the night before, ever careful to listen for its meaning as the teeth click quietly together and sing.
Mandy says about poets paying attention, I think is crucial. And that's one thing that also I try to work with students with, is working through their 5 senses. Because if we talk about the interior life and the language of poetry, the language of poetry really is the image. That's where we get the idea of the word imagination. The capacity for humans to be able to picture things in their minds, to picture, to smell things in their minds, to hear things in their minds, is what the imagination's capacity is, and it's a miraculous capacity. How do we move through the world? We move through it by paying attention through our different senses. Chief inlets of soul in this age is what William Blake called it. A way to get to the interior is by paying acute attention to the exterior, and that's what poetry does. One thing that's really helped me lately is just doing small, what I call poetic exercises, going outside and just opening my senses to what is around me. It lifts my heart. It also makes me feel that I'm not alone in the world, that the birds are out there, that the trees are out there, and they are paying attention to us. The book that I read the last poem from, and the next poem is called The 9 Senses. And it came from the idea that I've always worked with the 5 senses, but I was reading that the Sufis actually believed that there were 4 more. So there were 9 senses altogether, including clairvoyance and telekinesis and teleportation, other ways of sensing the world. So this is from that. It's called Clairvoyance. Moon has names for all her girls: Angel, Darling, Nobia. Trees are pollen merchants when green, the holy color, is at its apex. There are baby rabbits in the night gardens eating the world down. There are scooters to ride after dinner. There are presents to be wrapped in the thinnest potable yellow threads of light. Always there are books to cry over. Someone stays up until dawn when he smokes his cigarettes on the threshold. Someone walks to the edge of her village as appearance goes to work on the dark. What we remember of Earth, the rain-washed centers, so that we must have at one time seen them as panes of glass. If there are three things that proceed from our seeing, beauty, love, and sadness, perhaps it is sadness that casts its shadow between the other two. There are the heart people, the ones we know as children. There are the familiars who are here to counter despair. There are companions we recognize as a danger to us, and they might be us. It's curtains for you, we say, closing them. When I was going around reading at bookstores and different places from the nine senses, it was inevitable that after a reading, one or two or three people would come up to me and they would say, "Oh, but you forgot the sense of humor," or "You forgot a sense of fashion." And they would tell me all these different senses that were beyond the five or even the nine senses. And it was a wonderful way to engage with people. And I learned a lot. So this poem came from those discussions, and it's called Counting the Senses. To sense the dead around us in places where they are attached, or to sense past lives within the present one. To sense the presence of birds or animals on the roadside in the dark, or the moods of birds or animals, let alone people. There are tribes who can orient, even in the fog, naming the direction, east or west, that they are facing. There is the ability to see through lies, to feel an enemy at your back, to detect poison without taste, to douse for water. You are up before dawn, walking the shore, picking up broken bits of plastic and shell, to sense in ever refined levels the dissipating cloud levels of oneself, what Ezra Pound named an aristocracy of emotion. In the spruce copse near the confluence, you left your hair. Last night we played Scrabble. My first word was divine. You added an S to it, doubling your score. In this very room, 14 years ago, you turned over and found the lump. Your hand rose to it, as if guided by a sense of love.
So one of the things that I have, trying to find things to appreciate during this time, and that we're trying to understand what's happening around us. One of the things that I've found that really means something are efforts online and social media where I'm seeing old stories, oral traditions being told by Native elders, particularly in North America and Canada, but really also around the world, which I think is pretty remarkable, that people are sharing very, very deep parts of their culture and heritage and tradition really with the world. I think, in efforts to connect us and to help healing and regeneration. So, being a Native poet and knowing the oral traditions, the stories that matter to my people, finding myself as a poet in contemporary times, sometimes, you feel a connection to that continuum, and at other times, you wonder about this new form we have of pen and paper and computer and typing. But one thing that I think has always helped me in understanding all of that has been connections to other Native writers. And in particular, for me, someone that has always been very, very significant is James Welch. And so I was going to read one more poem from my collection. This is a poem that's dedicated to Jim Welch. Um, and it talks about a place that's significant on the Fort Belknap reservation to our people and to our stories and to our traditions. So, Cross Current for James Welch. The first harvest of wheat in flatlands along the milk startled me into thoughts of you and this place we both remember and also forget as home. Maybe it was the familiarity, or maybe it was my own need to ask if you have ever regretted leaving. What bends? What gives? And have you ever missed this wind? It has now grown warm with late summer, but soon it will be as dangerous as the bobcat stalking calves and pets just south of the river. Men take out their dogs, a case of beer, and wait in their pickups for dawn for a chance with their rifles. They don't understand that she isn't going to make any mistakes. With winter, my need for an answer grows more desperate, and there are only 4 roads out. One is the same the cat hunters drive with mannish glory and return along, gun still oil shined and unshot. Another goes deeper into Assiniboine territory. This is the one I should talk myself into taking next. I haven't much traveled the third except to visit a hospital where, after the first time, my mother refused chemotherapy. And the last road, you know as well as I do, past the coral painted Catholic church, its doors long ago sealed shut to the mouth of Mission Canyon. Then south, just a ways to where the Rockies cut open and forgive. There, you and I are on the ascent. And after that, the arrival is what matters most. So, in talking about oral traditions, there's also the important connection with indigenous languages and how those were formed so significantly and so powerfully in embedded in place, embedded in relationships and connections um, and survival, I think. So I've always tried to think about my language and try to find, as not a fluent speaker, try to find ways to incorporate it that to me feel natural and not forced. And so I have a 7-year-old son, and I was thinking about him uh, when he was very, very small. And this poem really emerged, and it just felt very normal to include some Assiniboine language in this poem. So that made me feel again like a part of that narrative and that continuum of Native storytelling. So we are the ones for Desmond. Waiting, a syllable forming, generating energy in small dark masses, marrow, stem cell, neuron, waiting to come alive again in this tiny body. Guwa, you should learn this word between you and I, my son Hokshina. Come here, come home to this place. Between you and I, no separation, but always room and silence until we can find meaning and the words together. I repeat it again and again, gesturing for you to come over, hoping the vibrations will come alive. You will listen inside yourself, and you will sense just who you are and who you belong to and among. as if you were underwater and could feel your pulse, the whir and swish of your blood traveling miles and miles across the wind-blown graves of your great-grandparents and their grandparents, Mikushi, Mitugash, yours. And they are out there, belonging to you before you were even born.
I'm loving this. Thank you guys so much. I feel like I'm getting my own personal poet laureate reading in my kitchen right now. Awesome. uh,
Me
so
too. They always sound different, even though, I've heard the poems that Mandy read, but they're always new. I love it.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Sam.
so much for your time. I will talk to you all soon.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye. Beautiful job.
You too. That was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.